Hey guys, Zach here from Claremont Armory. I had a request from a patron to do a little chat about making patterns to make better armor. You don't have to make patterns. You can take a random piece of steel and pound it into a three-dimensional shape, and maybe it'll be like the shield boss or helmet or elbow cop that you envisioned, and maybe that's great. Trim off all the stuff that's not necessary and away you go. That can be a good way to prototype things, and there are parts of design that works wonderfully for. By all means, if that works for you, go do it. I use patterns a lot for three major reasons. Repeatability, so I can make a whole bunch of them if I want that are all the same. I can make variations on those guys if I need to, but it's a good foundation for that repeatability. Speed, I don't have to tinker with it. I've got something that's already pretty much figured out that will give me results that I would expect. I've done it before. I can compare, like, does this look like what you want? Yeah, it looks like what I want. I use this pattern, the same one, and it'll probably look about the same because my tools and techniques are about the same. So repeatability, speed, and symmetry, which is not necessarily obvious, but it's a key thing for multiple reasons. Our eyes, modern people's eyes, are used to seeing things that are kind of machine made. They're square, the dimensions are very regular. And medieval stuff wasn't necessarily like that. There are some things that are kind of askew. They're more like a human face, in that, you know, one side is not exactly a mirror image of the other. They're close enough that it's not distracting, but I would look different if you put a mirror down the middle. It would look like a different person almost. Most people are not totally symmetrical. But getting something to appeal to a modern customer, that symmetry is important. And for articulation, if things are askew in any way, the articulation might not move straight. So to try to explain what I mean, I'll start with a pattern piece. So this is a little manila folder pattern piece, and I make my patterns symmetrical. This is an elbow cop. I make my pattern symmetrical by using the crease, the fold that's in the manila envelope, and fold it down the middle. So one side of the cop is going to be the same shape as the other. So it's kind of like a bit of an eye shape, right? Like a ocular. But each side is about, very close to the same shape. The dimensions from the center line are the same on both sides. So I fold it this way. I also fold it this way so that I can get my fans shaped the same. It's how they tended to be shaped. There's lots of different shapes that were appropriate for fans, but they're generally the north and south end of them are the same shape. So it'll look something vaguely like that. So how does that apply to the cop and the articulation? Well, this guy, we draw it out on a flat piece of steel, pound it into an elbow shape, and then this is actually a pattern for a slightly different elbow, but the idea is the same. Because the dimension, because it's symmetrical in this axis, sideways and lengthwise, I can use the same distance from that center line and the same distance from the edge of the cop to place my rivets. So these rivet points are going to be the same distance apart here and here as they are on this side, here and here. So that helps my articulation go straight like actual elbows do. Okay, that's actually pretty important. So if you start off with a cop that's not really a square straight cop, you're gonna have a rough time getting the articulation to work right and be comfortable. Make sense? So we're shooting for symmetry. That's the third major point of why to do patterns. So repeatability, speed, and symmetry. All right, so how do you go about making these patterns? The first big thing is to start with pictures. Look at medieval things as much as you can. An accurate, curated set of images, good things from books that are curated and published, things that are in museums. Think critically about what they look like, and soak yourself into as much imagery as you can. Look at extant pieces, tapestries, effigies, illuminations. All of that is valuable. I keep pictures like this floating around the shop so that I have a reference, like multiple angles and versions of similar pieces. So these guys are from the Met. They're the red 14th century kit that's in the Metropolitan Museum in Manhattan. So I have a couple different visions of what it looks like from different angles, from various strips. Various folks have taken them. This one is from Burgundy in about the same time. It was done in the 1390s. So it's a contemporary piece, hopefully. This guy has some suspicion because it was handled by Bradford, who's kind of a notorious curator in the Met, so it might have been tinkered with in some horrible ways, but it looks to be pretty typical of late 14th century knees, so I'm trying to reproduce some of them using some of this as a basis. But the more of these guys that you look at, the more you surround yourself with and soak into your brain, the closer you're going to be to creating something that's typical of an era. Look at things that are from a specific spot, a known piece. Look for things that are neighboring eras before and after in other countries to see how they differ. Maybe they're essentially the same, maybe they change wildly. So you can get a piece that looks perfectly Hungarian from the 1390s because you've got this great effigy and other pieces around it that really show the contrast. Well, it doesn't look like a German piece because these guys have a bunch of different aspects, different lines, different hinges, whatever. So you can really dial in exactly what you want to make it look like an actual medieval piece. So aim small if you can, but look broadly at larger other pieces in the field so that you know that it's typical. Sketch. So once you have all these images to plug into your brain, get yourself a sketchbook and do some drawing. It forces you to see the lines of the piece that you're really looking at, to refine your understanding of what the curves really are like. You don't have to be an amazing two-dimensional artist. It helps. It's not an advantage I have yet, but I'm working on it. But it's something that you can sketch out. It's groundwork that might be throwaway work, but it can be an important part of getting a better final piece. Draw numbers on it, put the dimensions, proportions, to try to refine your understanding of how that piece works. What are the critical things? Are there lanes above and below a cop? Where do the curves go, and are they convex and concave, and how tight are they? Sketching will give you a much more detailed understanding of all of those things. Measure. So you're gonna measure things that are on photographs to figure out what the proportions are. Is this twice as wide as it is tall? Is it something different? The more accurate you can be with that, the more precise your final result will be. Measure your patron. It's got to fit them. So the measurement around the knee, around the elbow, has got to be something that will work for the patron. So you take something that's this is a random knee cuff pattern, but is this going to be big enough to get around their limb and have enough on the sides with padding? So if they wear a gambeson, or if they have some kind of pad underneath, measure with some of that so you have some idea of how big things need to be, and then you can put that right on the pattern so that you know how big it really has to be. Okay, and then when you're working on a piece like a body harness or an arm or a leg, start with one of the big key pieces. With arms and legs, I usually start with the cops because it's central and you can derive the lane shapes from those. A lot of the proportions are based on those big articulated pieces. With a breastplate, I start with the biggest piece in the breastplate, usually right in the middle. If it's a globos, most of it is just a single plate. But I wouldn't start with the falls because they're derived from that central breastplate, and their shapes can be harder to predict. But I'll show you some tricks on how to derive tertiary pieces from that. Okay, so at that point you got a pattern piece. Evaluate it. Does it look like what you want it to? Are the proportions kind of reasonable? Can you envision how this is going to look when it's wrapped around, it's curved in 3 dimensions? Is it going to be about right? Sometimes you're going to be right, sometimes you're not. That's okay. But evaluate the piece. If it looks about right, it has a reasonable chance of success, then try building it in steel. try out your different approaches and techniques. So this is one that I tried. I made a manila pattern, and then I pounded it out in steel. This is an attempt at the knee cop from the red 14th century Met piece that I showed pictures of. And let's just, evaluate it critically. Do these look the same? From the side pictures, it looks pretty good. From the front, this point is way too deep a swoop. It's, I don't like it so much. It's a beautiful knee, but it's not really hitting the target. So back to the drawing board. I make a new pattern and pound it out in steel again. And then, this guy has a more subtle swoop up to the point. The sides look good. I like the curve. It's maybe a little deeper than the original, but from the side looks about right. The front is closer. So iterate. Start with a manila pattern, do it in steel, evaluate it, think critically, and then go through that loop. The more times you build a piece, the closer it will be to your final product. You don't have to lock into making it completely perfect, but do multiple passes and you'll get better over time. It's kind of like drawing a horse, like your first horse when you were 4 years old, you're sketching it out. It's like a stick figure. The eyes are all in the wrong places and whatever. But by second grade, you've drawn more horses and they're closer and closer to looking like the real thing. Don't stop drawing. Keep making versions of it and thinking critically, and look at other people's work and have other people evaluate it and give you some kind of critical feedback so that you can improve what you're building. Okay, other big points. That center line, use the center lines of symmetry as much as you can. Fold so that everything matches, so that it's straight and symmetrical. I like using French curves to make, some of these swoops. You can get these guys at stationery stores or art supply places. They allow you to do some of these, subtle curves. I think I used a different French curve for this one, but if you find the right spot, you can make little adjustments and draw nice smooth curves. They're good for drawing the shapes of fans. Put it on that side so you can see it. That sort of thing, so that they're nice, even curves. For me, it produces better results than trying to freehand the whole thing. I like using fine tip Sharpie markers. You might have to use a silver streak or soapstone if you're doing hot work, but for the initial layout, I find a fine tip Sharpie gives me the precision that I need to make things accurate so that it really matches my pattern. Anything, if it's 1/8 of an inch off, it starts to have an effect on the final shape of the piece, but particularly when you're talking about the symmetry of it. With cops, you'll probably notice with these guys, I leave the corners kind of rich where the fan meets the cop. On the final piece, that's usually a pretty acute angle. Like you'll have angles like this where they come in kind of tight and then leave. It's a tight little corner. If you try to do that in steel, the pounding of all the shaping will cause some stress in that crack. It's a stress riser. The work hardening will cause a crack, and then that crack can lead further down between the fan and the cop. And you can work on that. You can grind it out. You can punch it out. But it means you've changed your shape, and then you've got to work around that. So just leave that rich, draw your lines in, and adjust after you've made the shape in the steel that you want to. All right. So in summary, big thing, keep your stuff organized. I put everything in file folders, this manila file folder. I make my patterns out of manila, and I keep it all in a file folder. I put the patron's name and my initials and a date on each piece so that I know who I made it for and when. Then if I have pictures of it, I can say, yeah, this is about what I want. If I have multiple patrons that are about the same size or shape or taste, I can use the same piece over and over again. I keep, cups and rear braces and van braces all together for my elbows, so that if I need to make something again, I've got it all organized in a manila folder, and that goes in the filing cabinet that lives in the shop. So I can grab it whenever I need to and make more. I was going to talk about deriving pieces from other pieces. So we have a knee cop that we basically like. How do you get the lame shape from that? So you can just make a lame, your best guess at a lame, and make a pattern from it kind of by eye. Another approach that can work really well is to take something that's roughly right and pop it right into the cop. And then you can draw along the edge and see what should that upper edge shape be based on this cop, so that I have enough overlap so that the articulation works. We'll do another video on articulation. Try it in a couple different angles. Most lames almost disappear under the cop. But you can use one piece of steel to derive the shape of adjacent pieces. It's great for things like sabatons or lames folds, things like that. You can derive the adjacent pieces from the main central piece that you started with. It saves you time and having to kind of guess what the shape should be like. Okay, so in summary, the big stuff, look at pictures, draw it, iterate, think critically, and get better every time. Happy armoring.